the discovery. The restricted archives of Nexus Station's grand library stretched endlessly into shadow, their towering shelves disappearing into darkness above. Ethan Reyes navigated the narrow aisles with practiced ease, his datapad casting a pale glow across spines written in languages both human and decidedly not. He was hunting for a specific Earth folklore compilation, something about winter spirits and eternal bonds, for his comparative mythology thesis. The mythology wing smelled different from the rest of the library. Here, ancient paper mingled with the sharp ozone scent of alien data crystals, creating an atmosphere that felt simultaneously ancient and otherworldly. The station's artificial evening had dimmed the ambient lighting to near darkness, leaving only emergency strips along the floor to guide wanderers. That's when he heard it, a soft, broken sound that pierced the scholarly silence. A sob, muffled and desperate, coming from somewhere deep in the xenocultural traditions section. Ethan's feet moved before his mind fully registered the decision. He wound through the labyrinth of shelves, following the heartbreaking sound until he rounded a corner and stopped dead. She was breathtaking. Curled between two massive shelves, knees drawn to her chest, sat an alien woman unlike any he'd encountered in his 3 years on Nexus Station. Her skin was a deep navy blue, smooth and luminous even in distress, catching the dim emergency lights like polished sapphire. Long blonde hair, so pale it was almost white, cascaded over her shoulders and pooled on the floor around her, creating a striking contrast against her darker complexion. Delicate bioluminescent markings traced her cheekbones, throat, and bare arms, pulsing weakly with her sobs like dying stars. She hadn't noticed him yet, too lost in her grief. Tears streamed down her face, leaving glistening trails on that navy skin, and her whole body trembled with the force of emotions she couldn't contain. Ethan recognized her species from his xenobiology courses, Lirani, the empathic race from the Veil Nebula cluster. He'd read about them, how they experienced emotions with an intensity that could be beautiful or devastating. How they bonded deeply and completely. How loss could literally dim their inner light. He should probably leave, give her privacy. But something in the raw vulnerability of her posture, the way she seemed to be trying to make herself smaller, invisible, it pulled at something fundamental in his chest. Instead, Ethan knelt slowly, careful not to startle her. He pulled out the simple cotton handkerchief his grandmother had insisted he always carry, old-fashioned but practical, she'd said. "Hey," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know we don't know each other, but you shouldn't be alone when you're hurting." Her head snapped up, violet eyes, stunning against her navy skin, going wide with shock. For a moment they just stared at each other. Then, tentatively, he offered the handkerchief. Her fingers brushed his as she took it, and suddenly her markings flared bright teal, pulsing with unexpected warmth. She gasped, and Ethan felt it too, a rush of connection, like stepping into sunlight after months of cold. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice like wind chimes, musical despite the tears. She clutched the handkerchief but didn't use it, just held it like a lifeline. "I didn't mean to disturb anyone. I thought no one came here this late." "You're not disturbing me." Ethan settled more comfortably on the floor, his back against a shelf, close enough to offer presence without crowding. "I'm Ethan. Human, obviously. Grad student in comparative mythology." She studied him with those incredible violet eyes, and he could see her struggling with something internal. Finally, she whispered, "Veilira. I was a cultural anthropologist. From Lyran Prime." "Was?" he asked gently. Her markings dimmed again, that beautiful teal fading to almost nothing. "My mate died 2 cycles ago. Warp drive malfunction on a research vessel." "The bond," her voice broke. "When a Lirani loses their bonded, the light begins to fade. Everyone said I should return home, undergo the severance ritual, try to move on. But I couldn't. I fled here instead." She finally pressed the handkerchief to her face, breathing in its scent. "Humans still use fabric for this," she said with a sad, surprised laugh. So primitive and yet, so thoughtful. My grandmother's philosophy, Ethan replied. Technology is great, but cotton still dries tears. Veolyra looked at him again, really looked, and her markings pulsed a bit brighter. You're not afraid? Uncomfortable? Lirani are empaths. You can probably feel me right now, all this grief and brokenness pouring out. I do feel something, Ethan admitted. Like warmth and sadness mixed together. It's not unpleasant, just intense. Most species find it overwhelming. Her fingers twisted the handkerchief. They can't handle the emotional feedback. And I'm worse now, unstable, too intense. A broken Lirani whose light is dying. You don't look broken to me, Ethan said quietly. Hurting, yes. Grieving, absolutely. But not broken. Something shifted in her expression, hope warring with disbelief. You don't understand. I came here to lose myself in stories of eternal love, of bonds that transcend death, because I believed mine was over. That no one could ever want. She stopped, swallowing hard. On impulse, Ethan reached out and took her free hand. Her skin was cooler than his, smooth and almost silk-like. The contact made her markings flare brilliantly, teal light dancing across both their faces. What? She breathed, staring at their joined hands. I don't know the science, Ethan said, feeling the warmth spreading through his chest, but I know what my gut tells me. And it says you're not broken, Veolyra. You're just someone who loved deeply and lost terribly. That doesn't make you less. It makes you someone who knows how to feel truly. A fresh tear slid down her navy cheek, but this time she was smiling through it. Stay with me, she whispered, her voice trembling. Just for tonight? I don't want to be alone with the dark thoughts anymore. I'll stay as long as you need, Ethan promised. She shifted closer, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. She fit perfectly against his side, her blonde hair spilling across his chest as she finally let herself relax into his steady presence. Hours passed in the quiet sanctuary of the stacks. They talked in hushed voices, Veolyra describing her lost mate with love that still glowed bright even through the pain, while Ethan shared stories of Earth, of human resilience and the messy beauty of mortal emotions. She listened with fascination as he explained human grieving, how they carried loss not as a dimming but as scars that proved they'd loved. Humans don't bond the way Lirani do, he explained, his fingers absently tracing patterns on her arm, making her markings pulse in response. But we understand permanent loss. We frame it differently. The love doesn't end when the person does. It transforms. Veolyra turned in his arms to face him fully, violet eyes searching his face. You're so steady, she whispered. I can feel it, your emotions like bedrock beneath still water. It's been so long since I felt anything but chaos. Her hand rose to touch his cheek, tentative, and the contact sent another surge of warmth through both of them. This time it was different, not just comfort, but something electric, charged with possibility. Ethan, she breathed, and her markings were glowing brighter now, pulsing with light that reflected in his eyes. I shouldn't, this is too fast. We just met. But when you touched me, when our emotions connected, it was like breathing after drowning. He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing across one of those luminescent markings on her cheekbone. Tell me what you need, Veolyra. I need. She leaned closer, her breath ghosting across his lips. I need to feel alive again. I need to know that my light isn't dying, that I can still feel something other than loss. I need. He kissed her, cutting off her desperate words with gentle pressure. She made a soft sound of surprise that melted into a moan as she pressed closer, her hands fisting in his shirt. The kiss deepened, and Ethan felt the empathic feedback intensify, her desire and hope and desperate need washing over him, while his steady warmth and genuine affection flowed back to her. Her markings blazed brilliant teal, bright enough to illuminate the shadowed stacks around them. She broke the kiss, gasping, staring at her own glowing arms in wonder. "Look at me," she whispered. I'm bright again." "You were always bright," Ethan said, voice rough with emotion. "You just needed someone to remind you." She kissed him again, harder this time, pulling him down as she lay back on the floor between the shelves. Books scattered around them as they lost themselves in exploration, in touch that spoke louder than words. Every kiss, every caress made her glow brighter, until the entire section was bathed in soft teal light. "Stay with me forever," she whispered against his lips, her hands working at his shirt buttons with trembling fingers. "Forever's a long time," he replied, helping her with the task. "Not long enough," she breathed. Clothing became an obstacle quickly discarded. Veolira's hands explored Ethan's chest with wonder, her cool fingers tracing muscles and scars while her markings pulsed with every touch. The empathic connection between them had become overwhelming in the best way. He could feel her awe, her desire, her tentative joy mixing with his own protective tenderness and building attraction. "You're so warm," she murmured, pressing her navy-skinned body against his, sighing at the temperature contrast. Humans always run hot, but feeling it like this. Her markings weren't just on her face and arms. They traced down her neck, across her collarbone, swirling around her breasts and down her sides in intricate patterns that glowed brighter wherever he touched. It was intoxicating, this immediate visual feedback showing exactly how she responded to him. Ethan kissed along those luminescent lines, following them down, drawing gasps and soft cries from her as her fingers tangled in his hair. The connection between them deepened with every intimate touch. He could feel her pleasure as if it were his own, building in a feedback loop that left them both breathless. "Ethan," she gasped as he moved back up to claim her mouth again. "I should warn you, Lirani bonding, it's not just emotional. When we join completely, we share essence. You'll carry part of my light. It's permanent." He paused, looking into those violet eyes that reflected his face back at him. "You're asking if I'm sure. I'm asking if you understand." Her hands cupped his face. "This isn't casual for my species. If we do this, you'll be marked as mine. Other Lirani will see it. The light will trace your skin forever." "Good," he said simply, and kissed her again. She made a sound between a laugh and a sob as she wrapped her legs around him, pulling him closer. "Then take me," she whispered. "Make me whole again." Their joining was electric, drawing a cry from both of them as the empathic connection exploded into something transcendent. She glowed so brightly he had to close his eyes against it, but he could still feel her, her pleasure, her joy, her soul opening to him like a flower to sun. They moved together in the oldest dance, surrounded by forgotten books and ancient knowledge, creating their own story in whispered promises and breathless declarations. "Forever," she gasped as they moved toward completion together. "Forever," he promised back, and meant it. When they finally collapsed together in a tangle of limbs and scattered clothing, the station's artificial dawn was filtering through the high windows. Veolira lay sprawled across his chest, her markings still glowing softly, steady now instead of pulsing with distress. Her blonde hair created a curtain around them, and she traced lazy patterns on his skin. "Look," she whispered, wonder in her voice. Ethan glanced down and froze. Teal lines, exact matches to her markings, now traced his collarbone, wrapping around his shoulder and down his arm. They glowed softly, proof of their bonding written on his very skin. "Beautiful," she murmured, kissing the new markings. "You're beautiful. And mine." They eventually dressed, slowly, with frequent pauses for kisses and gentle touches, neither wanting to break the spell of their night. The library was beginning to wake around them, the sound of other researchers arriving filtering through the stacks. But in their small corner among the mythology texts, they existed in a bubble of warmth and new beginning. "I should probably ask," Ethan said as he helped her smooth down her blonde hair, "but what exactly does this bonding mean?" "Long term, I mean. Veolyra took his hand, pressing it over her heart where her markings glowed brightest. It means you're my mate now. Not in the casual way other species use the term, in the Lirani way. Permanent. Soul deep. We'll feel each other's emotions, though not as intensely as last night. Distance will mute it, but we'll always be aware of each other's presence. She traced the teal marks on his collarbone. These will mark you as bonded. Other Lirani will recognize them. Some of my people may be surprised. Concerned, even. We rarely bond outside our species, and human lifespans are so much shorter than ours. How much shorter? He asked carefully. I'm 147 cycles old, about 220 of your Earth years. I could live another 3 centuries. Her voice dropped. Which means I'll outlive you. Significantly. Ethan absorbed this, then shrugged. Then we make the time we have count. Every species has to deal with mortality differently. At least you'll have known love again. At least I'll have had you. Her eyes filled with tears, but they were different tears than last night. These sparkled with joy as they slipped down her navy cheeks. How are you so calm about this? Because I'm human, he said simply. We're really, really good at making the most of short time frames. It's kind of our thing. She laughed, the sound like bells, and kissed him thoroughly. When they finally emerged from the stacks hand in hand, several other library patrons stared. A Lirani security officer actually stopped mid-stride, her own markings flaring with shock as she recognized what Veolyra's glowing patterns meant. Word spread quickly through the station's Lirani community. By midday, 3 different elders had requested meetings with Veolyra. By evening, the story had hit the station's social networks. The weeping scholar who'd isolated herself for 2 years had bonded with a human after a single night. They faced the scrutiny together. Ethan met with the elders alongside Veolyra, enduring their questions about his intentions, his understanding of the permanence, his acceptance of outliving their bond. He answered with the same steady calm that had first drawn her, never wavering. She was crying in the library, he told the most skeptical elder. And I couldn't walk away. That's all it was, human compassion meeting someone in pain. If that led to something permanent, then I'm grateful. She's worth it. The elder studied him for a long moment, then looked at Veolyra's brilliantly glowing markings. Finally, she smiled. Perhaps humans are more suited to bonding than we believed. Welcome to our family, Ethan Reyes. In the weeks that followed, they became a fixture around Nexus Station, the navy-skinned Lirani with blonde hair that caught the light, walking hand in hand with her human mate whose collarbone bore matching teal marks. They worked in the library together, her centuries of knowledge complementing his human perspective on mythology and meaning. At night, they returned to their shared quarters, where Veolyra would curl against Ethan's warmth and whisper, "Stay with me forever." And every time, he would kiss her glowing markings and reply, "Forever and always." The other researchers began to notice something else. Veolyra wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. Her light had returned brighter than before, her empathic gift steady rather than overwhelming. She laughed freely, engaged passionately with her work, and looked at Ethan with devotion that made even the most cynical observers believe in bonds that transcended species. One evening, 6 months after that first night, they sat together in the mythology wing where they'd met. Ethan was reading her a human folktale about star-crossed lovers when she suddenly took his face in her hands. "Do you know what you've done?" she asked softly, her violet eyes shining. "You took a broken Lirani everyone had written off as lost and showed me that love doesn't die, it transforms. That forever can start with a single act of kindness." "You weren't broken," he insisted. "You were hurting," she finished with him, smiling. "I know. You've told me 1,000 times. But I heard broken in my own head for so long. You taught me the difference." She kissed him deeply, her markings flaring bright enough to illuminate half the wing. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Thank you," she whispered, "for staying. For choosing forever with me. Best."